My name is Lorelei Whitmore, and I have always believed that family comes first. At 71 Droit, I had spent decades building a life that, while modest, was comfortable. My late husband, Gerald, and I had worked tirelessly to provide for our daughter, Mallory. We had sacrificed vacations, new furniture, even simple luxuries, so she could have ballet lessons, college tuition, and everything she dreamed of. Gerald passed away 5 years ago, leaving me alone in our small house in Portland, Oregon. The rain had always been a constant companion here, but after he died, it felt heavier, colder. Still, I had my routines. I had my Tuesday book club, my garden that stubbornly bloomed despite my mediocre green thumb, and I had my car, a modest sedan, 12 years old, but it was mine. It represented freedom, independence, the ability to visit my few remaining friends without burdening anyone. Mallory was 43, married to a man named Brock Tillman who worked in tech and made more money than Gerald and I ever dreamed of. They had 2 children, my grandchildren, Camden and Ainsley, ages 15 and 12. I loved those kids with every fiber of my being, even though I rarely saw them anymore. That Sunday, Mallory called me in the morning. Her voice was bright, almost artificially cheerful. "I'm coming over for lunch. Mom, I want to spend some quality time with you." My heart lifted. Quality time with my daughter had become rare. She was always busy. Brock was always working on some important project, and the kids had their activities. I immediately began preparing her favorite meal, chicken pot pie, the way she had loved it as a child. The rain was gentle that morning, a soft patter against the windows of my little kitchen. I hummed as I rolled out the dough, remembering all the times Mallory had stood beside me on a step stool, her small hands dusted with flour, her eyes bright with excitement. Where had that little girl gone? When had she become this distant woman who only called on holidays and birthdays? Mallory arrived at noon sharp, dressed in expensive athleisure wear, her highlighted hair pulled back in a perfect ponytail. She hugged me briefly, and I tried not to notice how stiff her embrace felt. "Something smells amazing, Mom." She sat at the kitchen table, the same one where she had done her homework, where she had cried over her first heartbreak, where Gerald had taught her to play chess. I served the pot pie, watching her take the first bite, hoping to see that spark of nostalgic joy in her eyes. "This is really good," she said, but her attention was already drifting to her phone. We ate mostly in silence, punctuated by small talk about the weather, about Camden's soccer games, about Ainsley's newfound interest in photography. I asked when I could see them again, and Mallory's answer was vague, non-committal. "The kids are so busy, Mom. You know how it is." After lunch, as I cleared the dishes, Mallory remained seated at the table. She had that look on her face, the one I had learned to recognize over the years. It was the look she wore when she wanted something but did not want to ask directly. She cleared her throat. "Mom, I've been thinking about your situation." I paused, my hands in the soapy water. My situation. I turned to look at her, a knot of apprehension forming in my stomach. "You're 71, Mom. You don't really need the family car anymore. You barely go anywhere." I felt the words like a physical blow. I dried my hands slowly, turning to face her fully. She was scrolling through her phone again, not even looking at me. "Mallory, I use that car. I need it to get groceries, to go to my book club, to visit friends." She waved her hand dismissively, still not meeting my eyes. "You can take the bus, or use those rideshare apps. It would be so much easier. And honestly, Mom, we could really use the money from selling your car. Camden wants to go to a private soccer camp this summer, and it's expensive." I stood there in my small kitchen, the rain now coming down harder against the windows, and I felt something inside me crack. This was my daughter, the child I had sacrificed everything for, telling me I did not need my independence because her son needed an expensive soccer camp. What about the beach house? Her head snapped up. What about it? The beach house on the Oregon coast that Gerald and I had bought 30 years ago, back when we still had dreams of retirement vacations and family gatherings. It was a small cottage, nothing fancy, but it overlooked the ocean. After Gerald died, I had been too heartbroken to go there alone, so I had told Mallory she and her family could use it whenever they wanted. Over the years, it had become something she clearly thought of as hers. Nothing. I just remembered it. Mallory's expression softened slightly. "Mom, About the car. I really think this is for the best. You're getting older, and driving can be dangerous at your age. We're just looking out for you. I smiled. It was not a warm smile. It was the smile I had learned to wear when I was swallowing pain, when I was choosing to be strong rather than to be weak. Of course, dear. You're right. You can have the car. Her face lit up with relief and something that looked almost like triumph. Really? Oh, Mom, thank you. This will really help us out. She stood, hugged me again. That same brief, stiff embrace. And then she was gone, back into the rain, already on her phone, probably texting Brock about how easily she had convinced me to give up my car. Chapter 2. The Weight of Silence. After Mallory left, I stood in my kitchen for a long time, listening to the rain. The house felt emptier than usual, and the silence was suffocating. I walked into the living room and sat in Gerald's old armchair, the one I had kept even though the upholstery was worn and faded. I thought about the years Gerald and I had spent working, saving, planning. We had been factory workers, both of us, putting in long hours, coming home exhausted but determined to give Mallory a better life than we'd had. We had scraped together money for her ballet lessons when she was 6, even though it meant we ate beans and rice for dinner most nights that month. We had taken out loans so she could go to college, loans we were still paying off when Gerald got sick. And now, my daughter, who had everything, who wanted for nothing, deciding that I, at 71, did not need the one thing that allowed me to maintain my dignity and independence. I felt tears prickling at the corners of my eyes, but I refused to let them fall. I had cried enough in my life. I had cried when Gerald died, when I realized I would spend the rest of my days alone. I had cried when Mallory stopped calling regularly, when the grandchildren stopped asking to visit. I would not cry over a car. But it was not really about the car, was it? The next morning, I woke early, as I always did. The rain had stopped, and a weak winter sun was trying to break through the clouds. I made myself coffee and sat at the kitchen table with my address book, the old-fashioned kind with actual pages and handwritten entries. I called my lawyer, Dennis Carmichael. He had been Gerald's friend for 40 years, and he had helped us with our wills, with the house deed, with everything that needed legal attention. "Lorelei," Dennis said warmly when he answered. "It's been too long. How are you holding up?" "I'm fine, Dennis. I need your help with something." I explained the situation, carefully, methodically. I told him about Mallory's request, about the car, and about the beach house. Dennis listened without interrupting, and when I finished, there was a long pause. "Lorelei, are you sure about this? Once it's done, there's no going back." "I'm sure," I said. I had never been more sure of anything in my life. That afternoon, I drove my car, while I still could, to Dennis's office downtown. Portland traffic was always a nightmare, but I navigated it with the ease of someone who had been driving these streets for decades. In Dennis's wood-paneled office, I signed the papers. The beach house, the property that Gerald and I had worked so hard to afford, was officially listed for sale. The real estate market along the Oregon coast was strong. The house was small but well-maintained, and the location was prime. Dennis assured me it would sell quickly, probably within a month. "And you want the money put where?" he asked. "Into a trust," I said. "A trust that would benefit women in my situation. Older women who found themselves alone, who needed help with medical expenses, with housing, with maintaining their independence. I wanted something good to come from this betrayal, something that would honor Gerald's memory and the values we had tried to instill in our daughter." Dennis nodded slowly. "That's a beautiful gesture, Lorelei. It's what Gerald would have wanted." I drove home through the fading afternoon light, past the coffee shops and bookstores, past the parks where I used to take Mallory when she was little. I thought about the beach house, about the last time I had been there with Gerald, just a few months before he died. We had sat on the deck, watching the waves, holding hands, not needing to say anything. I'll miss that place, I thought. But I would miss my dignity more if I allowed Mallory to take my car without consequence. Chapter 3. The listing goes. Live. 3 days later, the real estate listing went live. The beach house was photographed beautifully, the ocean sparkling in the background, the interior looking cozy and inviting. The listing price was fair but firm, Dennis assured me that we would have offers within the week. I did not tell Mallory. I went about my days as usual, attending my book club on Tuesday, tending to my garden even though it was winter, and there was not much to tend. I waited. It was Brock who saw the listing first. He apparently had a Google alert set up for coastal properties, always looking for investment opportunities. He called Mallory immediately, and Mallory called me. It was early evening, nearly 6 o'clock, and I was making myself dinner when my phone rang. I saw her name on the screen and considered not answering, but I had never been one to avoid confrontation when it came to me. "Hello, Mallory." "Mom!" Her voice was shrill, panicked. "What is going on? Brock just showed me a listing for the beach house. Why is it for sale?" I turned off the stove and walked into the living room, sitting down in Gerald's chair. "I'm selling it," I said simply. "But why? That's our family house. We use it all the time." I almost laughed at that. They had used it twice in the past 3 years. "Mallory, you told me I didn't need my car. You said I barely go anywhere. Well, I realized you were right. I barely go anywhere, so I don't need the beach house either. I never go there anymore. But Mom, that's different. We love that house. The kids love going there. The kids haven't been there in over a year. Mallory." There was a pause. I could hear her breathing, could imagine her pacing in her expensive kitchen with its granite countertops and stainless steel appliances. "This is about the car, isn't it?" "Mom, I was just trying to help you. You're being so selfish." Selfish. The word hung in the air between us. I felt a surge of anger, but I kept my voice calm. "Mallory, you wanted to sell my car so your son could go to an expensive soccer camp. How is that less selfish than me selling a property that I own? You could have talked to us first, like you talked to me before deciding I didn't need my car." Another pause. I heard muffled voices in the background. Brock was probably hovering nearby, probably furious that his free vacation property was being sold. "Mom, please, don't sell the house. We'll figure something out with the car. You can keep it." I closed my eyes. This was harder than I had thought it would be. Despite everything, despite the hurt and the betrayal, Mallory was still my daughter. But I had made my decision. The house is already listed, Mallory. And honestly, I need the money more than I need property I never use. "What do you mean you need the money? You always said you were fine financially." "I am fine, but I want to do something meaningful with this money." "Your father would have wanted that." "Like what?" I did not answer that question. It was none of her business. Not anymore. "Mallory, I love you, but you made me realize that I need to prioritize my own needs. That's what I'm doing." She started to cry then, and I felt my resolve waver for just a moment. But then I remembered sitting in my kitchen, watching her scroll through her phone while casually suggesting I sell my car for her son's soccer camp. "I have to go, Mallory. I'll talk to you later." I hung up before she could respond. Chapter 4. Unexpected Consequences. The calls and texts started almost immediately. Mallory called 3 more times that evening. I let them all go to voicemail. Then Brock called, his voice tight with barely controlled anger. "Lorelai, this is ridiculous. That beach house has been in the family for 30 years. You can't just sell it without discussing it with us first." I deleted the message without listening to the rest. Camden, my 15-year-old grandson, sent me a text. It was late, after 10 o'clock, and I was surprised to see his name on my phone. "Grandma, please don't sell the beach house. It's my favorite place." I stared at that message for a long time. Camden was a good kid, sweet and genuine. He had nothing to do with his mother's decisions, but he also rarely contacted me unless Mallory put him up to it. "I love you, Camden," I texted back, "but sometimes adults have to make difficult decisions." He did not respond. The next morning, Mallory showed up at my house unannounced. I was in my garden, pruning the roses even though they were dormant for the winter. I heard her car in the driveway and stood up slowly, my back protesting. She looked tired, her eyes red-rimmed. For a moment, I felt a pang of guilt, but then I remembered the look on her face when she had told me I did not need my car, the dismissive wave of her hand. "Mom, we need to talk." I nodded and led her inside. We sat at the kitchen table, the same place where this had all started. I made tea, even though I knew Mallory would not drink it. She never did. "Mom, I'm sorry. I shouldn't have suggested selling your car. It was insensitive, and I wasn't thinking about how important it is to you." I poured the tea. watching the steam rise from the cups. "Thank you for apologizing, Mallory. So you'll take the house off the market." I sat down across from her, wrapping my hands around my cup for warmth. "No." Her face crumpled. "Mom, please." I said I was sorry. "What more do you want from me?" What did I want? I wanted her to see me, really see me, not as an obligation or a source of free property, but as a person who had needs and feelings and dreams of her own. I wanted her to understand that at 71, I was still entitled to my dignity and my independence. "Mallory, this isn't about punishing you. This is about me finally putting myself first. But the beach house, Mom, it has so many memories." I felt something harden in my chest. "Memories you haven't bothered to add to in over a year. Mallory, when was the last time you invited me to the beach house? When was the last time we all went there together as a family?" She looked away. "We've been busy. Everyone is busy, Mallory. But you make time for the things that matter. You matter to me." "Mom, do I? Then why did you suggest selling my car without even asking how I felt about it? Why do you only call me when you want something?" Her eyes flashed with anger. "That's not fair. I call you all the time. You call me on my birthday and on Christmas. That's not all the time." The silence stretched between us, heavy and uncomfortable. Finally, Mallory stood up. "I can see I'm not going to change your mind. You're being stubborn and spiteful, and it's not like you, Mom. Maybe you don't know me as well as you think you do," I said quietly. She left without another word, and I sat alone in my kitchen, my tea growing cold in front of me. Chapter 5. The offers start coming. Dennis called me 4 days after the listing went live. "Lorelai, we have 3 offers already. One is above asking price." I felt a strange mixture of relief and sadness. Part of me had hoped the house would not sell quickly, that I would have more time to reconsider. But another part of me knew this was the right decision. "Accept the highest offer," I told him. "Let's get this done." The buyer was a young couple from California, moving to Oregon for a job opportunity. They had a baby on the way, and were thrilled to find a house right on the beach. Dennis sent me their letter, one of those personal appeals that buyers sometimes write to sellers. They talked about how much they loved the ocean, how they wanted to raise their child in a place where they could hear the waves every morning. I cried reading that letter. Not tears of regret, but tears of bittersweet acceptance. The house would go to people who would love it, who would fill it with new memories and new life. That was how it should be. Mallory tried calling several more times over the next week, but I did not answer. I knew what she would say, and I was not ready to hear it. Instead, I focused on the closing process, signing papers, coordinating with Dennis, making sure everything was in order. The trust was established, the Lorelai and Gerald Whitmore Foundation for Women's Independence. It would provide grants to older women who needed help maintaining their autonomy, whether that meant medical expenses, home modifications, or transportation assistance. Every dollar from the sale of the beach house would go into this trust, managed by a board of local community leaders and nonprofit directors. Dennis helped me set it up, and when it was finished, he sat back in his chair and smiled at me. "Gerald would be proud of you, Lorelai." "I hope so," I said softly. Chapter 6. The closing. The closing was scheduled for a Friday afternoon in late February. The rain had returned to Portland, but it was a soft, gentle rain, the kind that felt cleansing rather than oppressive. I drove myself to Dennis's office, cherishing the independence my car still afforded me. In the conference room, I met the young couple who were buying the house. Their names were Ethan and Mira, and they were both in their late 20s, full of excitement and nervous energy. Mira's baby bump was just starting to show. "We're so grateful for this opportunity," Ethan said, shaking my hand warmly. "Your home is beautiful. We promise to take care of it." I believed him. There was something genuine in his eyes, something that reminded me of Gerald when we were young, full of hope and determination to build a good life. "I'm glad it's going to you," I said. "Fill it with love and laughter. That's all any home really needs." The paperwork was extensive, but Dennis guided me through it all. I signed my name again and again, each signature feeling like both an ending and a beginning. When it was finally done, when the deed was transferred and the check was handed over, I felt a weight lift from my shoulders. Walking out of that office, I knew Mallory would be furious when she found out the house had actually sold. I knew there would be more angry calls, more accusations of spite and stubbornness, but I also knew I had done the right thing. I drove home slowly, taking the long way through the city, I passed the community center where Gerald and I used to volunteer, serving meals to families in need. I passed the park where Mallory had learned to ride a bike, where I had run beside her, holding the back of the seat, letting go when I knew she was ready. So many memories, so much life lived in this city, and now a new chapter was beginning. Chapter 7, The Trust's First Recipients. 3 months after the beach house sold, the Lorelei and Gerald Whitmore Foundation for Women's Independence awarded its first grants. 5 women, all over the age of 65, all facing challenges that threatened their ability to live independently. There was Margaret, 73 thou, who needed wheelchair modifications to her van so she could continue to volunteer at the library. There was Rose, 68, who needed help paying for physical therapy after a fall. There was Doris, 81 thou, who needed a stair lift installed in her home so she would not have to move to assisted living. Each woman's story touched my heart. Each one reminded me why I had done this. The foundation organized a small reception to meet the grant recipients. It was held at the community center, the same one where Gerald and I had volunteered. About 30 people attended, mostly nonprofit workers, community leaders, and the 5 women receiving grants. I stood at the front of the room, my hands shaking slightly as I held my speech notes. I had never been comfortable with public speaking, but this was important. My husband Gerald and I believed that everyone deserves to live with dignity and independence for as long as possible. I began. These grants are a small way of honoring that belief and helping women who might otherwise lose their autonomy. After the speech, each recipient came up to thank me personally. Rose, the woman who needed physical therapy, hugged me tightly. "You've given me hope," she whispered. I was ready to give up, but now I can keep fighting. I held her hands in mine, feeling the papery texture of her skin, seeing the determination in her eyes. "Don't ever give up," I told her. "You're worth fighting for." Dennis attended the reception, and afterwards, as we stood together by the refreshment table, he raised his glass of punch in a toast. "To Gerald, and to you, Lorelei. You've created something beautiful here." I clinked my glass against his, but inside I felt hollow. I had created something good, yes, but at what cost? I had not spoken to my daughter in 3 months. I had not seen my grandchildren. Ainsley's birthday had come and gone without even a phone call from me, and I knew Mallory would have noticed. Chapter 8, An Unexpected Visitor. 4 months after the beach house sold, on a warm day in May, someone knocked on my door. I was not expecting anyone, and for a moment, I considered not answering, but curiosity got the better of me. It was Camden, my 15-year-old grandson. He stood on my porch looking uncomfortable, his hands shoved deep in his pockets, his hair too long and falling into his eyes. "Hi, Grandma." I was so surprised I could only stare at him for a moment. "Camden, what are you doing here? Does your mother know you're here?" He shook his head. "I took the bus. I wanted to talk to you." I opened the door wider and let him in. He had grown so much in the months since I had seen him. He was nearly as tall as his father now, his shoulders filling out, his voice deeper. I made him hot chocolate, even though it was too warm for it, because it was what I had always made for him when he was little. We sat at the kitchen table, and I waited for him to speak. "Mom says you sold the beach house to be mean to her," he finally said. "But I don't think that's true." "What do you think is true?" I asked gently. He stirred his hot chocolate, not looking at me. "I think she said something that hurt your feelings, and you were standing up for yourself. Smart boy." I felt tears prick at my eyes. "Your mother suggested I sell my car so you could go to a fancy soccer camp," I said. "She didn't ask me. She just told me I didn't need it anymore because I'm old." Camden's eyes widened. "That's messed up, Grandma. I didn't even want to go to that stupid camp." "You didn't?" "No. I wanted to spend the summer working at the community center, helping with their youth program. But Mom and Dad said it wasn't prestigious enough." I reached across the table and took his hand. "Camden, I want you to know something. I didn't sell the beach house to hurt your mother. I sold it because I needed to show her that I'm still a person with my own needs and my own life. And I used the money to help people." I told him about the foundation, about the women who had received grants. His eyes lit up. "That's really cool, Grandma. Can I help somehow?" I felt something warm bloom in my chest, something that had been cold and dormant for months. "I would love that." We spent the afternoon together, just talking. He told me about school, about his friends, about how things were tense at home. Mallory and Brock were arguing more, he said. Money was tight because they had overextended themselves on a new vacation property. The irony was not lost on me. When it was time for him to leave, I hugged him tightly. Don't be a stranger, Camden. You're always welcome here. I won't, Grandma. And Grandma, I'm sorry Mom was mean to you. I kissed the top of his head, breathing in the scent of his shampoo and teenage boy sweat. It's not your fault, sweetheart. None of this is your fault. Chapter 9. Mallory's Struggle. Camden's visit opened a door I had thought was permanently closed. He started coming over regularly, usually on Saturdays. We would work together on foundation business, reaching out to potential grant recipients, organizing fundraisers, building something meaningful. Through Camden, I learned more about what was happening in Mallory's life. The financial strain was real. Brock's company had downsized, cutting his salary by 30%. They had bought a timeshare in Cabo San Lucas the year before, a purchase they could no longer afford. Bills were piling up, and the beach house they had counted on using for free was gone. I felt a complicated mixture of satisfaction and guilt. I had not meant to cause them financial hardship, but I also would not apologize for my decision. One evening in June, as the sun was setting and painting my small living room in shades of gold and amber, Mallory showed up unannounced again. This time, she looked different. Smaller somehow, less polished. Her expensive athleisure wear had been replaced with faded jeans and a simple t-shirt. Mom, can we talk? I let her in, and we sat in the living room. I offered her tea, and this time, she accepted it. I've been doing a lot of thinking, she began, about what I said to you, about the car, and I realize now how hurtful that was. I waited, sipping my own tea, giving her space to continue. I took you for granted, Mom. I thought you would always be there, always willing to give me what I wanted. I never stopped to think about what you might need or want. Her eyes were red, and I realized she had been crying before she came. Things have been hard lately. Brock's job, our finances, we've had to cut back on a lot of things. And I keep thinking about the beach house, about how if we still had it, we could at least have one place to escape to. That was the problem. Mallory, it was never yours to escape to. It was mine and your father's. I know that now. She set down her teacup, her hands trembling slightly. I'm sorry, Mom. I'm so sorry for treating you like you didn't matter, for acting like your needs were less important than mine. I looked at my daughter, really looked at her, and saw what I had been missing for months. She was struggling, not just financially, but emotionally. The veneer of perfection she had maintained for so long was cracking. Mallory, I forgive you, but things can't go back to the way they were. I don't want them to, she said quickly. I want them to be better. I want to be better. Chapter 10. Rebuilding. Slowly. Forgiveness, I learned, is not the same as forgetting. And rebuilding a relationship takes time, patience, and genuine effort from both sides. Mallory started coming over more often. At first, the visits were awkward, both of us uncertain how to navigate this new dynamic. But gradually, we found our footing. She would help me with the garden, something she had not done since she was a teenager. We would sit on my small back porch, drinking iced tea and talking about things that actually mattered. She told me about her marriage, about how she and Brock had been growing apart, about how the financial stress had forced them to reevaluate their priorities, about how Camden's insistence on volunteering instead of attending expensive camps had made her realize how warped her values had become. We were trying to give him everything, she said one Saturday afternoon, but we forgot to teach him that everything isn't what matters. I nodded, watching a hummingbird dart among my roses. That's a hard lesson to learn. You and Dad never gave me everything, but you gave me what I needed. Somehow, I forgot that. Ainsley started coming over with Mallory sometimes. At 12, she was at that awkward age where she was not quite a child anymore, but not yet a teenager. She was shy with me at first, probably confused by the months of distance between our families, but she warmed up when I showed her my old photo albums, pictures of Mallory at her age, pictures of Gerald and me when we were young. You were beautiful, Grandma, she said, looking at a photo from my wedding day. I laughed. I was terrified. Your grandfather and I got married when I was 20 years old. I had no idea what I was doing, but you figured it out. Eventually, It took time. Is that what happened with you and Mom? You had to figure things out. I looked at this perceptive child, so much wiser than her years. Yes, sweetheart. Sometimes even mothers and daughters have to figure things out. Chapter 11. The Foundation Grows. By the fall, the Foundation had awarded grants to 15 women. Word had spread through the community, and donations started coming in from people who wanted to support the cause. The initial money from the beach house sale had been substantial, but with the additional donations, we were able to help even more women. Camden became deeply involved, taking on real responsibilities. He helped screen applications, organize events, and even spoke at a fundraiser about why he believed in the Foundation's mission. My grandmother taught me that everyone deserves dignity and respect, no matter their age, he said to a room full of potential donors. She showed me that sometimes the bravest thing you can do is stand up for yourself, even when it's hard. I sat in the audience, tears streaming down my face, so proud I thought my heart might burst. Mallory was there too, and after Camden's speech, she found me in the crowd. He's an amazing kid, she said. You raised him well. She shook her head. Dad helped raise me well. And you. I just hope I haven't screwed up too badly. You haven't, I assured her. You're learning. That's all any of us can do. That evening, after the fundraiser, Mallory drove me home. As we sat in my driveway, neither of us ready to end the evening, she turned to me. Mom, I never asked you. Why didn't you tell me what you were planning with the beach house? Why did you just do it without warning? I thought about my answer carefully, because if I had told you, you would have tried to talk me out of it. You would have made promises to change. And maybe you would have, or maybe you wouldn't have. But either way, it would have been about you, not about me. I needed to do something for myself, by myself. That makes sense, she said quietly. It must have been lonely, though. Making that decision alone. It was. But I learned something important. I learned that I'm stronger than I thought I was. In Chapter 12, A Bittersweet Resolution. A year after that fateful Sunday lunch, we gathered at my house for Thanksgiving. Mallory, Brock, Camden, and Ainsley. It was the first holiday we had spent together in over a year. I cooked a turkey, even though it was too much food for 5 people. Mallory brought side dishes. Camden made a pie, following a recipe he had found online. Ainsley set the table with my good china, the set that Gerald and I had received as a wedding gift and almost never used. As we sat around the table, saying grace, I looked at each face and felt a complicated knot of emotions. Love, yes, but also sadness for the time we had lost. Gratitude for this moment, but also awareness that things would never be the way they once were. Brock cleared his throat. He had been quiet most of the day, probably still uncomfortable with me after everything that had happened. Lorelei, I want to apologize. I was angry about the beach house, and I said things to Mallory that made the situation worse. I should have supported her in making things right with you instead of making it about what we lost. I appreciated his apology, even though I could tell it was difficult for him to give. Thank you, Brock. I appreciate that. After dinner, as Mallory and I cleaned up in the kitchen, she turned to me suddenly. Mom, are you happy? The question surprised me. Was I happy? I thought about the past year, the loneliness of those first months, the satisfaction of building the foundation, the slow rebuilding of my relationship with my daughter and grandchildren. I'm not unhappy, I said carefully. I'm learning that happiness isn't a constant state. It's moments, good and bad, all mixed together. I miss Dad, she said suddenly. I miss being able to ask him for advice. He would have known how to handle the situation better than I did. Your father wasn't perfect, Mallory. He made mistakes too, but he always tried to do better. She nodded, tears in her eyes. That's what I'm trying to do now, to do better. I pulled her into a hug, holding my daughter close for the first time in what felt like years. I know you are, and I'm proud of you for that. That night, after everyone had gone home, I sat in Gerald's armchair and thought about everything that had happened. I had lost the beach house, a place filled with precious memories. My relationship with Mallory would never be quite what it had been before. There was a wariness now, a knowledge that love could coexist with hurt. But I had gained something too. I had gained the respect of my daughter, even if it had come through pain. I had gained a sense of purpose through the foundation. I had gained the knowledge that I was strong enough to stand up for myself, even when it cost me dearly. The rain had returned to Portland, a steady drumbeat against the windows. I closed my eyes and imagined I could hear Gerald's voice. "You did good, Lorelei. You did real good." Maybe I had, or maybe I had just done what I needed to do to survive. In the end, perhaps they were the same thing. I thought about the young couple living in the beach house now, about their baby who would be born soon, about the new memories they were creating in a place that had once held ours. I thought about the women the foundation had helped, about Rose who could walk again, about Margaret who could still volunteer at the library. Life was not perfect. My story did not have a neat, happy ending where everyone reconciled completely and all wounds were healed. Some wounds leave scars. Some relationships, once broken, can be repaired but never quite restored to what they were. But perhaps that was okay. Perhaps the point was not to return to some idealized version of the past, but to move forward, carrying both the pain and the wisdom it had brought. I was 72 now. I still had my car, my independence, my dignity. I had a strained but improving relationship with my daughter. I had grandchildren who loved me. I had a foundation that was making a real difference in women's lives. It was not everything I had imagined my life would be at this age, but it was enough. It had to be enough. Because in the end, the lesson I had learned, the lesson I hoped Mallory had learned too, was this: we cannot control how others treat us. We can only control how we respond. We can choose to accept disrespect, or we can choose to stand up for ourselves, even when it costs us something precious. I had made my choice. And while it had been painful, while it had cost me more than I had anticipated, I did not regret it. The rain continued to fall, washing the streets of Portland clean, and I sat in the warm circle of lamplight in my small living room, a woman alone, but not defeated, heartbroken, but not broken, and that, I realized, was its own kind of victory. Final reflection. This is the truth about standing up for yourself. It does not always lead to a happy ending. Sometimes, it leads to permanent changes in relationships. Sometimes, what you lose cannot be recovered, but what you gain, self-respect, dignity, the knowledge that you are worth standing up for, is irreplaceable. At 71, I learned that it is never too late to remember your own worth, and that is a lesson that, no matter how painful, was worth learning. Epilogue. 5 years later. My name is Lorelei Whitmore, and I am 76 years old. As I sit here in my small living room on this gray November afternoon, watching the rain paint patterns on my windows, I find myself reflecting on how much has changed since that Sunday lunch 5 years ago, when my daughter told me I didn't need my car anymore. The foundation that Gerald and I started, well, that I started in his memory, has become something far larger than I ever imagined. We've helped over 200 women now, women who were on the verge of losing their independence, their dignity, their sense of self-worth. Each one of their stories has touched me deeply, reminding me why I made the choice I made all those years ago. But today, I need to tell you the rest of the story. The parts that came after that first bittersweet Thanksgiving. The parts that were harder, more complicated, and ultimately more honest than anything that came before. 2 years after I sold the beach house, Mallory and Brock separated. It happened gradually, then all at once, the way these things often do. The financial strain had exposed cracks in their marriage that had probably been there all along. Brock's resentment about his reduced salary, Mallory's growing awareness that she had built her life around material success rather than genuine connection, these things created a distance that eventually became unbridgeable. Mallory called me on a Tuesday evening. I remember because Tuesday was book club night, and I had just gotten home, still thinking about our discussion of a novel about mothers and daughters and all the ways we fail each other. "Mom," she said, her voice small and broken. Brock moved out. I sat down heavily in Gerald's chair, my heart aching for her even as I recognized that this was probably necessary. "I'm so sorry, sweetheart." She came over that night, and we sat together in my small kitchen, the place where so much of our story had unfolded. She cried, and I held her the way I had when she was a little girl and had scraped her knee or lost a friend. "I failed, Mom. I failed at my marriage." I stroked her hair, now threaded with gray she no longer bothered to color. Mallory, sometimes marriages end not because someone failed, but because two people grew into different versions of themselves. That's not failure. That's just life. But I thought if I did everything right, if I provided everything for my kids, if I maintained the perfect house and the perfect life, then everything would be okay. I pulled back to look at her face, seeing the exhaustion there, the toll that years of maintaining perfection had taken. Sweetheart, perfect doesn't exist. Your father and I didn't have a perfect marriage. We fought. We struggled. We went through periods where we barely liked each other, but we kept showing up, kept trying. That's all anyone can do. Did I mess up the kids? I thought about Camden, now 17, and Ainsley, 14. I thought about how Camden had become such a vital part of the foundation, how he spent his free time volunteering, how he had recently told me he wanted to study social work in college. I thought about Ainsley, who was struggling with anxiety, but was in therapy and learning to advocate for herself. No, I said firmly. You gave them something more valuable than perfection. You gave them an example of someone who could admit when she was wrong and try to do better. That's worth more than all the perfect Christmases and expensive vacations in the world. Camden graduated from high school the following spring. The ceremony was held at the football stadium, and I sat between Mallory and Brock, the three of us maintaining a cordial distance that had become our new normal. They were better apart than they had been together in those last years. More honest, more themselves. When Camden's name was called, I felt tears stream down my face. This boy who had been brave enough to visit me during our family fracture, who had seen the value in helping others even when his parents were focused on status and success, was heading off to college to study social work. After the ceremony, at the small party Mallory hosted at her new apartment, much smaller than the house she and Brock had shared, Camden pulled me aside. "Grandma, I got something for you." He handed me an envelope. Inside was a letter, handwritten on nice stationery. "Dear Grandma Lorelei," it began. "I wanted you to know that you changed my life, not just by starting the foundation, though that's important. You changed my life by showing me that it's never too late to stand up for yourself, to choose dignity over comfort, to do what's right even when it costs you something. You lost the beach house, and for a while, you lost us too. But you never lost yourself. Thank you for being strong when it would have been easier to give in. Thank you for teaching me that real strength isn't about never bending. It's about knowing when to stand firm. I'm going to college to learn how to help people the way you've helped people. I hope I can make you as proud as you've made me." I couldn't read the rest through my tears. I hugged him tightly, this grandson who had become such a remarkable young man. "You already have, Camden. You already have." Ainsley's journey was harder. At 14, she was diagnosed with severe anxiety and depression. She had always been the quiet one, the one who kept things inside, and suddenly everything came pouring out in destructive ways. There was a terrible night when Mallory called me at 2 a.m. Ainsley had been rushed to the hospital after taking a handful of pills from Mallory's medicine cabinet. She would be okay physically, but the incident shook all of us to our core. I drove to the hospital, my hands trembling on the steering wheel, grateful beyond measure that I still had my car, that I could be there when my family needed me. Mallory was in the waiting room, looking destroyed. How did I not see it? She kept asking. How did I miss that she was hurting this badly? I sat beside her, taking her hand, because she's good at hiding, just like you were at that age, just like I was. Mallory looked at me in surprise. "You struggled with depression? After your father died?" "Yes. Some days I didn't want to get out of bed. Some days the weight of being alone felt unbearable. But you always seemed so strong." "Strong doesn't mean not struggling, Mallory. It means struggling and getting up anyway." When we were finally allowed to see Ainsley, she looked so small in that hospital bed, her face pale, her eyes hollow. I sat beside her and took her hand. "Ainsley, sweetheart, I know it feels like the pain will never end, but it does get better. Not all at once, not easily, but it does." "How do you know?" she whispered. "Because I've been there, because I've felt that darkness, and I'm still here, and I'm glad I stayed." She cried then, deep, wrenching sobs, and Mallory and I held her together, 3 generations of women who had all struggled, all suffered, all survived. The foundation celebrated its 5th anniversary that fall. We held a large event at the Portland Convention Center, inviting all the women we had helped, all our donors, all the community partners who had made our work possible. I had asked Camden to give the keynote speech. He was home from college for the weekend, and he had grown into his adult self, confident but humble, passionate about his work. 5 years ago, my grandmother did something that seemed harsh to some people. She sold a property my family had used for years, a place filled with memories. She did it because she needed to make a point, to show that her needs mattered too. Some people, including my mother at the time, thought she was being selfish. But what my grandmother actually did was teach all of us an invaluable lesson about dignity, about self-worth, about the importance of standing up for yourself even when the people you love don't understand. He paused, looking out at the audience. The Lorelei and Gerald Whitmore Foundation has helped over 200 women maintain their independence. But it's done something else too. It's reminded all of us that older women who have spent decades caring for others, deserve to be cared for in return. It's reminded us that age doesn't diminish worth, that reaching 70 or 80 or 90 doesn't mean you stop mattering. I sat in the front row, Mallory beside me, both of us crying. When Camden finished, the entire room stood in applause. But the moment that mattered most to me was when he came down from the podium and hugged me tightly. Love you, Grandma. Love you too, sweetheart. At the reception afterward, I found myself talking to a woman named Vera, who had received a grant 3 years earlier. She was 79, and the grant had helped her pay for modifications to her home so she could continue living independently after a stroke. You saved my life, she told me. Not just literally, though the modifications did that. You saved my sense of self. You showed me I was still worth investing in. I squeezed her hand. You were always worth investing in, Vera. Sometimes we just need someone to remind us of that. As the evening wore on, I found a quiet corner and watched the crowd. Mallory was talking animatedly with some of the foundation board members. Her face lit up in a way I hadn't seen in years. She had started volunteering with the foundation herself, using her organizational skills to help with fundraising and events. It had given her purpose, something she had been lacking in those years of maintaining appearances and chasing status. Ainsley was there too, talking shyly with Camden and some of his college friends. She was doing better, though the struggle with her mental health was ongoing. She was in therapy twice a week, on medication that was helping, and she had started writing poetry about her experiences. Some of it was dark, painful to read, but it was honest and raw and real. Brock had even shown up, standing awkwardly by the refreshment table. He and Mallory had worked out an amicable divorce, and he had started dating someone new, a woman closer to his age who didn't care about status symbols. He caught my eye and raised his glass in a small salute. I nodded back. We would never be close, but we had reached a place of mutual respect. The thing no one tells you about standing up for yourself is that the consequences last forever. 5 years later, I still didn't have the beach house. I never would. Those memories, that place of peace and beauty that Gerald and I had created together, was gone. Sometimes, late at night when sleep wouldn't come, I allowed myself to grieve for it. I thought about the morning coffee on the deck, the sound of waves, the salty air. I thought about Mallory as a little girl, building sandcastles, her laugh carrying on the wind. Those moments were lost, unable to be recreated or recovered. And my relationship with Mallory, while healed in many ways, bore the permanent scars of what had happened. There was a wariness now that would never fully disappear, a knowledge that we had hurt each other deeply, and that love, while powerful, doesn't erase pain. We had rebuilt something, yes, but it was different. Not better or worse, necessarily, just different. But I had gained things too. The foundation had grown beyond my wildest dreams. We had helped hundreds of women, and through them, we had helped their families, their communities. I had learned that my voice mattered, that my needs were valid, that I was more than just a mother and grandmother. I was a whole person with my own dreams and dignity. Camden had become the kind of man who would make this world better. Ainsley was learning to fight for her own mental health, to advocate for herself. And Mallory had learned that perfection was a prison, that authenticity was more valuable than appearances. Last month, I got a call from a woman named Patricia. She was 68 and had recently been widowed. Her children wanted her to sell her house and move in with one of them, but she wasn't ready to give up her independence. She had heard about the foundation and wondered if we could help. As I talked with her, I heard myself in her story. The well-meaning children who thought they knew what was best. The assumption that age meant incapacity. The slow erosion of autonomy disguised as care. Patricia, I told her, you have every right to maintain your independence for as long as you're able. Let's talk about what you need to make that possible. We arranged for a grant to help her with some home modifications and a stipend for grocery delivery, so she wouldn't have to rely on her children for every little thing. 2 weeks later, she called me back, crying. I feel like myself again, she said. I didn't realize how much I had disappeared trying to make everyone else comfortable with my aging. That's why we do this work, I told her. Because you matter. Because we all matter, no matter our age. Yesterday was Sunday, and Mallory came over for lunch. It's become our tradition now, just the two of us, once a month. No husbands, no children, just a mother and daughter trying to understand each other better. We made chicken pot pie together, the way we had that day 5 years ago when everything changed. But this time, we worked side by side, our hands moving in familiar rhythms, our conversation flowing easily. Mom, Mallory said as we rolled out the dough, I've been thinking about writing a book, about what happened with us, about what I learned. I looked at her in surprise. What would you say? She paused, her hand still on the rolling pin. I'd say that I spent so much time trying to give my children everything that I forgot to teach them the most important things. I'd say that I took you for granted, assumed you would always be there, always willing to sacrifice yourself for my benefit. I'd say that losing the beach house was the best thing that ever happened to me, even though it hurt like hell at the time. Would you really say that? I asked quietly. Yes, because it's true. Mom, you gave me something more valuable than a beach house. You gave me a wake-up call. You forced me to look at the kind of person I had become, and you made me want to be better. We put the pie in the oven and sat at the kitchen table with tea. The rain was falling softly outside, the kind of gentle rain that feels like a blessing rather than a burden. Do you regret it? Mallory asked suddenly. Selling the beach house, all the pain it caused. I thought about that question. Really thought about it. Did I regret it? I regret the pain, I said finally. I regret that it had to happen that way. But I don't regret standing up for myself. I don't regret choosing dignity over comfort. And I don't regret creating something good from something painful. The foundation? Yes. And more than that, I don't regret teaching Camden and Ainsley that it's okay to set boundaries, to say no, to put yourself first sometimes. I don't regret showing you that I'm a whole person, not just your mother. She reached across the table and took my hand. I see you now, Mom. I really see you. And I'm sorry it took so long. Gerald's been gone for 10 years now. Sometimes I still talk to him, usually late at night when the house is quiet and I'm alone with my thoughts. Did I do the right thing? I ask him. Did I make the right choice? I never hear an answer, of course. But I imagine what he would say. He would tell me that there are no perfect choices, only choices we can live with. He would tell me that I was braver than I knew. He would tell me he was proud of me. I miss him every day. I miss his laugh, his terrible jokes, the way he would hold my hand while we watched television. I miss having a partner, someone who knew me completely and loved me anyway. But I've learned to be alone without being lonely, to find purpose and meaning in my solitude. Next week, the foundation is opening a community center specifically for older women. It will offer classes, support groups, social activities, and resource navigation. We're calling it the Gerald Whitmore Center for Women's Independence. Mallory designed the logo, Camden helped with the programming, and even Ainsley contributed some of her poetry for the opening ceremony. It's located just 3 blocks from my house, close enough that I can walk there on nice days. I've already signed up to volunteer, to teach a class on financial literacy for women over 60, because that's another thing I learned from all of this. It's never too late to use your experiences to help others. This morning, I stood in front of my bathroom mirror, really looking at myself for the first time in a while. At 76, my face is deeply lined, my hair completely white. My body aches in ways it never did before. I move slower, tire more easily. Age is relentless in its advance. But when I look in that mirror, I don't just see an old woman. I see someone who stood up for herself. I see someone who created something meaningful from pain. I see a woman who learned, finally, that she mattered. Would I do it all again, knowing what I know now? Knowing the pain it would cause, the relationships it would strain, The permanent losses I would endure? Yes. Without hesitation? Yes. Because the alternative, continuing to be diminished, to have my needs dismissed, to slowly disappear into the role of selfless grandmother who existed only to serve others, that would have been a different kind of death. A death of the spirit while the body kept living. I chose life. Messy, complicated, painful life. And 5 years later, I can say with certainty that it was the right choice. Yesterday, I received a letter from Ethan and Mira, the young couple who bought the beach house. They send me updates occasionally, along with photos. Their son, Oliver, is 4 now, a tow-headed little boy who loves the ocean as much as I once did. The latest photo shows him on the beach, building a sandcastle, his face lit up with joy. In the background, I can see the house, freshly painted, with new flower boxes on the deck. They've loved it well, just as I knew they would. Looking at that photo, I felt a bittersweet ache. That could have been Camden or Ainsley, could have been my family still making memories there, but it isn't, and it never will be again. That chapter of my life is closed, but new chapters have opened. The foundation, the community center, a renewed relationship with my daughter built on honesty rather than assumptions, grandchildren who see me as a whole person, not just a source of unconditional support and free property. I placed the photo on my refrigerator, next to pictures of Camden's college graduation and Ainsley's latest poetry award, next to the invitation to the community center's grand opening, next to a newspaper clipping about the foundation's work. This is my life now. Not what I planned, not what I expected, but mine nonetheless. Tonight, I'll attend a foundation board meeting. Tomorrow, I'll have lunch with Rose, the woman who received one of our first grants, who has become a dear friend. Next week, Camden will visit during his spring break, and we'll work together on a new grant program for women dealing with chronic illness. My calendar is full. My days have purpose. I am not just existing, I am living. And my car, the catalyst for all of this, still sits in my driveway. It's 16 years old now, showing its age, but it runs fine. Every time I drive it, I'm reminded of why I fought to keep it, why that Sunday lunch 5 years ago became the moment that changed everything. Independence, dignity, self-worth. These aren't luxuries, they're necessities, and they're worth fighting for, even when the cost is high, especially when the cost is high. I'm 76 years old. I live alone in a small house in Portland, Oregon. I have a complicated relationship with my daughter, a son-in-law I barely know, 2 grandchildren I'm still getting to know, and a foundation that helps women maintain their independence. I sold a beach house 5 years ago, and I lost something precious in the process. But I gained something too, the knowledge that I am strong enough to stand up for myself, that my needs matter, that I am more than the sum of what I can give to others. My story doesn't have a perfect ending. Real stories rarely do. There's still pain, still loss, still moments of profound loneliness. Mallory and I will never fully recover what we lost during those months of estrangement. I will never get back the beach house, never make new memories there. But I have something more valuable than a perfect ending. I have an honest one. I have a life I chose rather than one that was chosen for me. I have relationships built on authenticity rather than obligation. I have work that matters and days filled with purpose. And on the days when the grief still comes, when I miss Gerald so much I can barely breathe, when I wonder if the price was too high, I remind myself that the alternative was losing myself, and that was a price I wasn't willing to pay. Not at 71, not at 76, not ever. The rain continues to fall outside my window, that eternal Portland rain that I've lived with my entire adult life. It's cold and gray and relentless, but it's also cleansing, nourishing, necessary, like the choices we make, like the stands we take, like the pain we endure in pursuit of something better. I am Lorelei Whitmore. I am 76 years old, and I am still here, still standing, still fighting for what matters. That's my story. It's not perfect, but it's true. And in the end, truth is all we really have. The rain falls, the years pass, and I remain, diminished by loss but defined by resilience, heartbroken but not broken, alone but not defeated. And that, I have learned, is enough. It has to be enough, because it's all any of us can hope for in this complicated, painful, beautiful life. To stand up when it matters, to choose dignity over comfort, to remain ourselves even when it costs us dearly. That's the lesson. That's the truth. That's what I learned from a Sunday lunch and a sold beach house, and 5 years of living with the consequences of my choices. Your worth is not determined by what you can give others. Your needs are not less important because you're older. Your voice matters, even when, especially when, the people who love you don't want to hear it. Stand up. Speak up. Choose yourself, even when it's hard, even when it costs you something precious. Because in the end, losing yourself is the highest price of all, and that's a price none of us should have to pay. The end.